The Recreational Trails Program, often referred to as RTP, is a federal aid grant program authorized by the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act. Today's presentation will provide an overview of RTP, the components of a successful application, and a brief overview of the RTP grant procedures. The Recreational Trails Program is an assistance program of the Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA. In New York State, the program is administered by the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, or OPRHP. RTP provides funds to develop and maintain recreational trails and trail-related facilities for both motorized and non-motorized uses. The RTP legislation requires that states use 30% of funds to support motorized recreation, 30% for non-motorized recreation, and 40% for diverse recreational trail use. All projects funded through the Recreational Trails Program must be legally and physically accessible to the public. Any project that does not meet this requirement will be considered ineligible. The RTP allows for reimbursement of up to 80% of the total project cost. At a minimum, a local match is required for 20% of the total eligible project costs. Grant funding will not be increased after a grant is awarded, and the project sponsor is responsible for any increases in the total cost of the project. This is a reimbursement program, therefore 100% of the cost of any eligible expense must be incurred and paid by the project sponsor before submitting a request for reimbursement to OPRHP. The RTP funding is authorized in phases by FHWA. Project budgets and schedules must account for phased authorizations to comply with state and federal requirements, including, but not limited to, the National Environmental Policy Act, State Environmental Quality Review Act, the Uniform Act, and Buy America requirements. Expenses are only allowable after federal authorization for the appropriate phase. Project schedules and budgets should be structured based on the following phases: preliminary design, final design, right-of-way, and construction. Proceeding without federal authorization may jeopardize federal participation in the project. Every RTP construction project requires a right-of-way clearance certificate. Applicants must submit documentation of their legal property rights to undertake the project with their application. This can be a deed, lease, management agreement, letter of support, or letter of agreement from the property owner to enter into a legally binding agreement. When a project involves the transfer of property, all property owners must be notified in writing of their legal right to an appraisal and just compensation. More information and examples are available in the New York State RTP Guide, which can be found at parks.ny.gov/grants. RTP projects must further one or more of the goals in the statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, statewide Trails Plan, Empire State Trails Plan, or a local Trails Plan. There is a total of $1.9 million available for RTP projects. The maximum grant award for all RTP projects is $250,000. The minimum award for trails projects is $25,000. This includes all trails maintenance, restoration, rehabilitation, development, construction, acquisition, and assessment projects. For equipment purchase only projects, the minimum award is $5,000. There are 6 eligible project types funded through RTP. Maintenance and restoration of existing trails, which includes any kind of trail maintenance, restoration, rehabilitation, or relocation. Development and rehabilitation of trailside and trailhead facilities with a direct relationship to a recreational trail. Purchase and lease of recreational trail construction and maintenance equipment. Construction of new recreational trails, which includes trail bridges or installation of appropriate trail signage. Acquisition of easements and fee simple title to property, provided that the acquisition must be from a willing landowner. And assessment of trail conditions for accessibility and maintenance. Some ineligible project types include law enforcement, trail feasibility studies, and construction of sidewalks. Please consult the RTP guide at parks.ny.gov for more information regarding project types and eligible costs. The RTP guide reflects the most recent guidance on the Recreational Trails Program and the RTP grant procedures and supersedes previous guidance materials distributed by OPRHP. The answers to most questions regarding the Recreational Trails Program can be found in the RTP guide. This is where applicants can find information regarding phased authorizations, federal requirements, and reimbursements. All RTP applicants should read the RTP guide, which is available at the link on the screen or by going to parks.ny.gov/grants and clicking Grant Programs and Recreational Trails Program. Eligible RTP applicants include not-for-profit corporations that are pre-qualified in the grants gateway and municipalities. All applicants must register in the grants gateway at grantsmanagement.ny.gov. In addition, all not-for-profit organizations must pre-qualify in the grants gateway. Not-for-profit organizations which are not pre-qualified at the application deadline will be ineligible to receive grant funding. Any not-for-profit corporation who has not begun this process should begin immediately. To get started, go to grantsmanagement.ny.gov. Attachments are required for each of the various project categories and noted in the application requirements section of the Resources Available guide. All applicants must carefully read the application requirements and provide all necessary documentation for the appropriate project type with their application. The following items must be attached with every application: photos showing the project area and/or equipment to be purchased, a map of the project area with the project area clearly identified, State Environmental Quality Review Act compliance documentation, written documentation clearly identifying community involvement and support for the proposed project, and documentation of the necessary property rights to complete the project. Any property acquired specifically for an RTP project must comply with the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act of 1970 as amended, also known as the Uniform Act. Those choosing to donate property must be informed in writing of their right to an appraisal and compensation, even if they decide to waive either or both. For further information on the federal requirements for property acquisition, see the right-of-way section of the RTP guide. Applicants submitting proposals for RTP projects, which include the acquisition of real property, are required to provide a copy of the letter delivered to all property owners describing the RTP project and informing them of their rights, copies of letters from property owners indicating their willingness and intent to sell or donate the property to the applicant, and any additional documentation regarding the status of the property acquisition. Sample letter to landowners is available in Appendix B of the RTP guide. For projects that include the purchase or lease of equipment, applicants must provide certification that all landowner permissions have been obtained and a written estimate and photos of the general type of equipment sought for purchase or lease. Please note that a competitive procurement process is required after federal funding is authorized, and a grant award is not an authorization to purchase. If the project is for the acquisition of motorized equipment for use on any state land, the applicant must provide a signed statement by the agency of jurisdiction certifying that the use of such equipment on state land is consistent with the policies and management plans for such property. RTP project budgets must only include eligible, necessary, and reasonable costs. The project budget should break down expenses to correspond with the phases of federal authorization: preliminary design, final design, right-of-way, and construction. Project budgets must clearly outline the total project cost, the amount of RTP grant funding requested, and the matching share, including the source and status of matching funds. Eligible budget items include design fees and other professional services for the preparation of preliminary and final design documents, costs incurred for construction inspection and supervision, archaeology, including fieldwork and reporting, workforce or contract labor costs directly related to the project, equipment, supplies and materials, and right-of-way costs associated with the acquisition of real property, such as appraisals, title search, and closing costs. All expenditures must be directly attributable to the project. Indirect costs, including administrative overhead, do not qualify. The Recreational Trails Program is a reimbursement program, meaning applicants must be prepared to pay for project costs upfront and then request reimbursement of up to 80%. All grantees are expected to submit a reimbursement payment request every 6 months after the date of federal authorization, and all projects must be completed within 5 years from the date of federal authorization. All RTP projects require federal authorization before construction. Any work accomplished prior to federal authorization for the appropriate phase cannot be reimbursed by RTP. The federal authorization process takes time, and the best way for project managers to expedite this process is to prepare ahead of time all the required documentation or have the resources available to obtain the required documentation. In many cases, it can take up to 1 year or longer before federal authorization for construction. Several federal requirements must be met before construction. The applicant or project sponsor will be responsible for the collection of information pertaining to NEPA and seeker at the time of application, as well as throughout the project. Before proceeding to construction, each project must first receive NEPA approval and right-of-way clearance. The RTP project construction contract requirements must be included in all RTP contracts and subcontracts. These include federal civil rights requirements for equal employment opportunity and disadvantaged business enterprises. Any steel or iron permanently incorporated into the project must conform to the Buy America requirements. Equipment, such as trail groomers and tractors, must also meet these requirements. The RTP design report is the essential document which enables phased federal authorizations. Design reports contain all the essential environmental review documentation, historic preservation review, design criteria, right-of-way documentation, design plans, and specifications. A draft design report is submitted to OPRHP during the preliminary design phase and must be approved by OPRHP and the project manager before federal authorization for construction. Individual approvals and required documentation will be added to the design report as the project progresses through preliminary design, final design, and right-of-way phases. For more detailed information about these RTP grant requirements, please visit parks.ny.gov/grants and click on Grant Programs and Recreational Trails Program. The RTP guide as well as application materials can be found here. The RTP guide provides an overview of the procedures required to administer an RTP grant and provides further detailed information for applicants. Regional grants administrators play a critical role in the development of your application and the administration of your grant. Please see the contact page on our website to find the regional grants administrator for your county. It is essential that applicants provide all of the required documentation with their application. Please read the application requirements section carefully and attach all required documentation to your application. Demonstrate how your project advances one or more of the goals of the statewide trails plan, statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation trails plan, or local trails plan. Pay particular attention to the budget questions and clearly identify the total project cost, amount of RTP grant funding requested, and the matching share. Read the scoring tips for each application question and prepare for phased authorizations, the preparation of the RTP design report, and include any associated costs in the project budget. The application deadline can be found at regionalcouncils.ny.gov. Do not wait until the application deadline to submit your application. Start now, read all available guidance, and ask questions and prepare accordingly. Good luck. All information presented here, as well as any of the documents, forms, or resources mentioned, can be found on our agency website at parks.ny.gov. All potential applicants should review the information included in the CFA Resources Available Guide and the Recreational Trails Program Guide. For more information, please contact the OPRHP Grants Office or the Regional Grants Administrator for your county. Thank you.